Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Chief Executive Officer of Bedrock, Detroit, and Chairman of the Detroit Riverfront Conservancy, Matt Cullen.
Good afternoon. I very much enjoy the opportunity to be here. Appreciate Sandy, the invitation to be here to talk about defining a decade in the city of Detroit. I wasn't really clear when they invited me as to which decade I was supposed to be talking about. So I'm going to talk about both decades. I'm going to talk about the decade just passed, and I'm going to talk about how that might inform the decade to come. And it's certainly an exciting time for us. And so I'm going to start by just making the point that, when we started the last decade, I mean, we were at a pretty difficult, challenging place. I mean, the headline at the time was the Time magazine, the famous Time magazine, the tragedy of Detroit, all of the things that were going on relative to political corruption and our automotive industry being challenged and so on. And so it was a very difficult time in our city as we started into 2010. But a lot of us, certainly myself and Dan Gilbert and a lot of others, though, certainly the Illiches and folks saw the city differently at the time. And I think Dan would describe it, there's one description, sort of the perfect storm. I mean, we like to define what was starting to take place sort of over the horizon was a perfect sunny day with new political leadership coming on the scene. The automotive industry, our friends at GM and Ford and Chrysler kind of get back on their feet. A willingness to take on insolvency that had been a perennial problem for the city. Importantly, public spaces really became a part of things that were taking place with our community coming together in a different way on the riverfront, economic diversification and so on. So a very different place within the city as we came into 2010. So kind of from a dead start, but with a lot of hope. And that was the backdrop in 2010 when Dan brought the Quicken Loans and the family of companies down into the house that Pete Carmanis built, the Computer Building, One Campus Marshes. I joined Dan around the same time, 2008. We wanted to be a part of what was taking place in the city of Detroit, but we really wanted to be a part of influencing what could happen in the city of Detroit. So we came down in 2010 and with 1,700 folks and said we wanted to be a part of making a difference. But when we first came down, and this is kind of the point I want to make, last decade versus this decade, there wasn't anything really happening. It was very a challenging time, as I said. We came down and for the first bit of time, just got acclimated to Detroit, understood what was happening, and spent a lot of time putting drawings on the board and talking optimistically about the future that would be very different from the reality that we confronted in 2010. And so I thought it would be fun in 2013. I think it was the first one of these Detroit conferences. Sandy invited me to come talk. And I took just a little clip of that because I think there's some interesting sort of, juxtaposition between where we were then and where we are now. So let me, if I could, ask for that clip to be run. Get into the retail. I mean, it's starting, right? It's been slow. It's been funny. You always talk about there's kind of always a chicken and an egg issue when you talk about retail in downtown. It's always like, hey, look, nobody lives here, so the retailers won't come. And then everybody says, well, nobody's going to live down here because there's no retailers, right? So it's always been a challenge for us. And I think what we're trying to do at Rock and what a lot of others are doing is we're getting kind of tired of that sequential discussion, right? So we're going to try and do big bang. We're going to try and put resources behind both and try and drive an outcome at the same time. So this highlights what our friends at Moose Jaw look like with their pop-up store over the holiday. We lit up all of the storefronts along Woodward. They've had such a great response. They're going to stay open now indefinitely. We hope it may translate indefinitely to permanently. So you can see a lot of hand waving there. And you can see me talking about Moose Jaw, right? Because that was it. That was our retailer at the time. And we had aspirations for a lot of other things. But my highest hope at that point in time was that the pop-up Moose Jaw store would stay open over the holiday. And it did. And thanks to our friends at Moose Jaw for having confidence in us. But at the same conference, I showed this map. And I started to talk about all of the work that we were doing. And we broadly, right? I'm going to use pronouns kind of interchangeably. I'll try and stick with we for the most part. But, what could happen from a retail standpoint? What could happen from a public space standpoint with Campus Marshes and and Capitol Park and Library Square. And we put a lot of resources into that. And we worked with the city and with the Downtown Detroit Partnership and others. And so when I was here that time, I started, in addition to, sort of extolling the virtues of Bushaw, I talked a lot about, hey, what could happen, and showed a lot of drawings and ideas. And we said, maybe Campus Martius could be a lot more active than it was at the time that we came down. And this is, again, 2013. So we showed some renderings of what a sort of reinvigorated Campus Martius would look like. And then we said, how about Cadillac Square? I mean, at the time, it was a little more than sort of a asphalt, concrete parking lot. And we said, we brought in people from around the world to help us envision what it could look like. And we said, we think it could be much more vibrant, much more active. And so it's fun now, 7 years later, to look back and say, Campus Martius is a phenomenal public space. This is a picture of the tree lighting this year with tens of thousands of people down there. Cadillac Square, the holiday markets, basketball, food trucks, a very vibrant space. And I can kind of continue that cadence of discussion about what's taking place. Capitol Park, this is a pretty dreary picture. It's a pretty dreary place at the time. No retail to speak of, at least no legal retail was taking place here. Empty buildings, empty storefronts, not very nice. And so I was here and I said, hey, we can do better. We're gonna look at this cool picture, right? We're gonna do this. And I don't know if anyone believed us. I don't know if we believed ourselves, but we came down and said, what if we change the park? What if we make the park look something like this? What if that park becomes the anchor of a great, vibrant residential area with retail all around, tremendous restaurants, and the office filling up, and now, again, the anchor to a great portion of downtown. And even since 2013, I mean, so that's, when this sort of story starts, but in 2016, 17, we were talking about a riverfront, and I've been very involved with the riverfront for a long time. Mark Wallace, I know a lot of the riverfront team are here. But think about this. This is only 2016, 17 that we said, maybe we could do something cool on the East Riverfront, and we could build this great park for families and playscapes and all of those kinds of things. And sure enough, over the course of just a few years now, I mean, just to kind of demonstrate for you the pace of what we were doing, this Robert Vlade Park opened in the last year. It's going to really be launched this year. Tremendous space for people in the city of Detroit. We're really excited about that. Another thing that wasn't on our radar screen at all the last time I was here was Beacon Park from DTE. I mean, maybe Jerry Anderson was thinking about it, but nobody else was. And now you see how quickly these really transformative projects can come in place, and it's fun to see. One last one is Library Square. I mentioned that as something we were envisioning. I mean, it was literally these, surface parking lots and these abandoned buildings. I hope they were abandoned. I'm not sure, but they weren't in good shape at the time. And now, we need parking, so great, let's have parking, but let's do it in what's almost a piece of art, which is the Z deck. Let's build retail all around it. Let's where the chorus is, let's create the belt and bring activation to everything that's taking place down there. So just a cadence of things that were just a vision at the time, the turn of the last decade, and now have come to reality. So I mentioned my friends at Moose Jaw to start, and again, we're very appreciative of them, but now they have 120 different friends that have joined them from a retailer standpoint down here, so I can broaden my conversation a little bit. So it's really exciting. I mean, great restaurants and retailers that we never sort of aspired to, H&M and Lululemon and Nike and Under Armour and Barbados, and it's just a tremendous infusion of that, so we're really excited about that. And it's not obviously just the retailers, that's a piece of it, but it's people. And so we've had this array of cool buildings, but we're filling them up. And we're filling them up in 3 different ways. Dan Gilbert, the family companies, Jay Farner, Quicken Loans. We came down with 1,700 people. We're up to 17,000 people at the end of last year, which is pretty incredible. And we're excited about that. Thank you. But obviously, that's so we can grow our own companies. We can go hunting and recruit companies, and everyone down in the city has done that. So now we have a lot of high-tech companies coming into town. We got Twitter, we got Microsoft, LinkedIn, we've got sort of artistic companies, Rossetti. The banks are coming back into town, and so our office portfolio, from a Bedrock standpoint, as well as the other offices are downtown, are about 95% full, which is incredible, which is why we need to go vertical. Talk more about that. So we're growing our own. we're going out and recruiting and hunting, and then we're actually, the ecosystem for these startups is now very vibrant in the city. And so suddenly we have a lot of this venture capital thing starting to take place. And so, I mean, a lot of familiar names here, but one of them to focus on is Bottom Left, which is StockX, the marketplace of things. It hit the benchmark of being our first unicorn as far as $1 billion valued company now. It started in the city of Detroit, and it's creating tons of jobs and opportunity for people, which is something great for all of us. When I talk about opportunities, I want to make sure that I make clear that, you know, it's opportunity for everybody, and we, certainly Dan, the team, but the mayor, everyone else is spending a lot of time on making sure those opportunities are available for people that live in the city of Detroit and that have lived in the city of Detroit. And so as we're doing this tremendous expansion of building, let's make sure that the skilled trades folks are folks that live in the city, that are trained here. So we're working with Randolph Center and others to do that. Let's make sure that the hospitality jobs are available for people that live here. So Bright Hop and other projects are working on that. So that's something that we really started focusing on towards the end of the last decade, as we did the neighborhoods. And again, Mayor Duggan, I know he spoke this morning, but with his leadership, the things that are starting to take place. But we at Rock have been very active too. We've gone out into the neighborhoods with the blight reduction project and with the Rehabbed and Ready and with Neighbor to Neighbor on the tax foreclosure. And I think all of us understand the core of downtown is 7 square miles. The city of Detroit is 139 square miles, and we need to all be working to make sure that we have great places throughout the city for people. Speaking of that, it's great to put money into these things, but we also put literally our people out there. And so one of the stats that I'm really proud of is that our family of companies last year put 130,000 hours of volunteer stuff into the city. And I guarantee you they got more out of it than they put into it, because it's really part of our DNA now, being part of the city. And so that's something that we're very proud of. The last one that I'll talk about before I sort of pivot to the future is sort of an interesting one, is Q-Line. 2013, we were just talking about building it. It came online. Obviously, the economic impact has been tremendous. $8.1 billion of development since 2013, 295 separate projects, and a lot happening there, and that continues to improve from a service and an impact standpoint. So that's sort of, you know, the look back on a decade, and I think it informs us relative to what we can aspire to in the next decade, because it's going to be better. And the reason I say that with some significant confidence is that, remember where we started the last decade, Time Magazine, dead in the water, nothing happening. And you look at what's happening now, it's incredible, the things that are already underway. So let me hit those quick. One Campus Marshes, 300,000 square foot addition, opened this year. Tremendous event space. So the big office chunks that we need to continue the growth underway. Hudson's, the most iconic site in the city of Detroit. We got a big hole there, and we're working on the hole, and we're ready to come up out of the ground this year. $1 billion plus project, million square foot plus project, retail, residential, community gathering space is really one that Dan has focused on that we're really excited about. Right behind that's going to come the Monroe block, and another. I mean, just think of the numbers that we're talking about. And again, we're not talking about, hey, sequence and maybe it'll happen or kind of thing. Monroe block is coming, $1 billion project, million square feet, significant components of office, significant new residential, so lots of activity there. Another one, just a cadence of stuff taking place. The Book Tower, one of the most spectacular buildings in our community, abandoned for many years. We came in, my great team from Bedrock that I'm proud to be part of now has come in, is refurbishing that building. 2022, it's going to be one of the greatest buildings sort of in the downtown area, residential and hotel. And we're moving out into the neighborhood a little bit, right? So into the neighborhood being the sort of the edge of the downtown. So City Modern, under construction. 400 units are going to be delivered over the next few years. Mixed income, affordable housing, a big deal for us as we try and build the kind of Detroit that we all want to be a part of. And that cadence is going to continue because we have the Douglas development site, which is part of Brewster Douglas, and we have the opportunity here to do 900 plus units that are coming, and so that's going to follow right on the cadence of the City Modern project. We're not by any means alone, so lots of great stuff happening. Here we are in the Illich world, if you will. The District of Detroit, what they're doing with Google, with the business school, lots of other opportunities in front of them. I know that Mary was here earlier, but I just have to hit again this Michigan Central because it's such a big deal what Ford Motor is doing here in the heart of, the heart of Corktown and opening up that entire area of the city in a real profound way. $740 million project, 5,000 jobs coming as a result of it, and just changing how people see the city of Detroit. And just at the very end of last year, at the very end of the last decade, Steve Ross came into town. You guys have heard of him, pretty big real estate developer, brought the University of Michigan, Dan, Gilbert, everybody came together and announced this amazing project, Detroit Center for Innovation, that's going to take place right kind of ironically or poetically or something right on the old abandoned jail construction project. And so our gateway to the city is going to be significantly different than it has been, and we're really excited about that. I can't sort of wrap up without talking about public space and talking about the Riverfront a little bit, so I have to again brag on some of the stuff that's taking place there. The Ralph Wilson Centennial Park, I mean, just it's going to be one of the most significant public spaces in the country. The Wilson Foundation has been tremendous in their support of it. Construction starts this year. Will be open in 2022 if Mark Wallace and Karen, everybody does their job properly, which I'm sure they will. May Creek. So I talked about the train station and I talked about the riverfront. Well, May Creek is going to be our DeQuinder cut on the west. It's going to tie those together. And this rendering, I hope you now have confidence that the renderings that we're showing you are going to become reality. So we think we can bring this online at the same time we bring the park online. At the same time, Ford brings Michigan Central. So that's really exciting for us. And then one that probably hasn't gotten as much notoriety that I think we need to pay attention to, which is something that the mayor and Brad Dick and Megan and their team are looking at, which is the Joe Lewis Greenway. And this is a 32-mile greenway throughout the entire city, kind of a rails to trails conversion that's going to knit our entire community together and allow people to get to the riverfront and take advantage of all the things taking place. So some phenomenal stuff taking place. And sort of last slide on the topic is, when I showed you the first stuff in 2013, there's lots of stuff that we hadn't even contemplated that's in place already. When I showed you now the momentum that we have starting this decade, I mean, that doesn't contemplate the things that I think that are ahead of us. And this just gives you a snapshot of, hey, 375's coming up to grade, and the riverfront's booming, and General Motors is booming, and what about, a tremendous expansion of residential? I think these are the types of things that aren't on the books today, but that we're going to see before the end of this decade. And so with that, I got so many pictures I want to show you, but that's it for now. But I want to show you a quick flyover to give you a sense as to what we think the middle of this decade is going to look like. So if we could roll that video, please. So that's what our hometown is going to look like over the next couple of years, and that's why we're so enthusiastic about the decade in front of us. So great to be with you. I think I'm going to spend a little bit of time with Sandy now.
Returning to the stage to join Matt Cullen, please welcome President and Chief Executive Officer of the Detroit Regional Chamber, Sandy Barua.
Wow, Matt, that flyover is just incredible.
It's very cool. We just literally updated it over the course of the last couple of days. Some of the teams here that did that. It even shows the Innovation Center and things that are current as of the last few weeks. So it's great.
There was three things that hit me about that flyover. One, just, what's in store for our future. Secondly, just the incredible quality of it. I mean, I know it was animated or digital, but it looks so real. And the third thing was it showed Tiger Stadium full to capacity, presumably for a World Series game. Yeah, exactly.
I was going to make that, but I decided not to make that joke. But yeah, that would have been when.
Well, excellent. Well, so we're talking about the decade that was, but more importantly, the decade that is to come. So 10 years ago, Dan and you and Jay made that decision to bring those 1,700 employees downtown. What kind of reception did you get, or what kind of environment were you presented with when you made this decision, and contrast that with what's happening today?
I mean, I think everybody was incredibly welcoming when the decision was made, and Dan was and is a charismatic sort of leader, and so the idea that he would make that kind of commitment, I think, had a profound impact on the people who viewed the city of Detroit. But there was still tremendous skepticism. So we came down in 2010. 2013 is kind of what I was having fun with showing where we were talking about. There wasn't much happening. And so it took a while to kind of get the flywheel going. It took a while to get people to have the confidence in it. It took a while for Mike Duggan to become mayor and for Rick Snyder to take on the bankruptcy and for Kevin Orr to come in and for those kinds of things, that kind of perfect sunny day that was forming. But what was so fun is to see that momentum. I mean, I'm somebody who's lived here my entire life and has worked hard to try and get the city, but it's always hard to get that momentum going. And I think what's profoundly different as we end the decade and move into the next is the level of momentum that we have now and the level of confidence that we have. I mean, that same, it was New York Times in 1990, and in 2010 it was Time Magazine saying the tragedy of Detroit. But now those same things are saying Detroit's one of the top 5 places to visit in the world, and to come here, and more or equally importantly, people are investing capital here. So I think it's very different. It was an exciting time as we went through it, but we're starting the next decade in a much better place.
Yeah, well, New York was bankrupt, right? I
Right.
mean, but to look at it today.
Yeah.
So 10 years ago, did you and Dan and others on your team, did you foresee where we would be in 2020, or has where we are in 2020 outstripped your expectations?
Well, if Dan were here, he would probably tell you he expected everything that happened. So,
But he's not here right now.
He's not here right now. I didn't think that this could happen. I mean, I thought that it would, that we could make a difference. But I grew up here working at General Motors for 30 years, working on the city for a long time, and everything was slow and hard and episodic. We did the Ren Center, we did the ballpark, but nothing was connected. There wasn't momentum.
A lot of silver bullet approaches.
A lot of silver bullets, exactly. And as I made the point in the previous conference, I mean, everybody was looking for like this sequential thing. What Dan came in, and he just had the heft and the vision. And again, I don't want to always be Dan, right? Because a lot of people have been working on this for a long time.
Takes a village.
But yeah, it takes a village. But Dan came in and said, I'm going to do it at such scale, and I'm going to take unnatural real estate risks. And it made a profound difference. But having said that, even Dan would tell you that, look, it's been profoundly more significant of growth and development than we had contemplated.
No.
We're very excited about it.
You kind of created your own market in a way.
We did to a large extent, and then the mortgage Quicken Loans took off, and again the political leadership, automotive, suddenly GM, Ford, Chrysler are back, and they got their mojo back, and they're leading their industries again, and so a lot of things came together, and I think that's the result of, or the result of that is what we're experiencing today.
10 years ago was when I moved here, and I moved here because I knew this region and the city had tremendous opportunity just because of the assets that were here. I mean, the auto companies, the engineers, the history, but I'll tell you that where we sit in 2020 has outstripped my expectations as well. I mean, it's just like, I'm just constantly amazed as I walk around downtown, go to Corktown. I just love the vibrancy, and I'm just so happy that I undersold what I thought this city could do.
It's amazing. I mean, on the drive over here, I'm driving by cranes and scaffolding, and I'm like, I don't even know what building that is. I mean, I used to know, if there was a crane here, I knew what it was for, right? Because there weren't that many. If there was a restaurant, it was Lafayette, Coney Island or something. There weren't like 120 of them.
Remember the days when we could keep up with new restaurant openings?
Absolutely.
In Detroit?
I have a hard time keeping up with new hotels now. So it's really different.
So speaking of driving around, your presentation mentioned neighborhoods, right? That's obviously still very much a work in progress. I mean, the entire city's a work in progress, but that's perhaps a bigger work in progress. What do you see for the neighborhoods? And then if you could add a little bit more to what, Quicken and Bedrock's role is in all of that.
Well, I mean, I see just a real focus on the neighborhoods now. I mean, again, there's this tale of two cities kind of discussion, but it's not valid. I mean, the downtown is doing well, but if the neighborhoods don't do well, the city's not going to do well. It's not sustainable. I mean, it's a single organism, and so I think a lot of people, certainly the mayor, the foundations, a lot of the corporations, their attention is moving towards the neighborhoods now to say, look, what can we do here? And it's responding. I mean, I forgot the stats, but the neighborhood values are up 20%. I mean, the prime neighborhoods have doubled or tripled in value over that last 10 years. But a lot of resources now with the Strategic Neighborhood Fund and so on are going into those transition neighborhoods that with the right infusion of resources can can come out the other side as a very robust neighborhood. So I think it's that kind of thing relative to housing stock. I think it's the jobs. I mean, at the end of the day that we talked about, I think that's a really important piece of it. I think it's a lot of the infrastructure things that the mayor's doing. So I feel good about it, but a long way to go.
Right. Well, you and I are both East Siders, and we both drive past that East Jefferson neighborhood every day, and it's amazing what has happened in that community.
I mean, West Village, Indian Village, I mean, all that whole district, I mean, but Woodbridge, Corktown, I mean, Rosedale Park, where I grew up, I mean, a lot of them are seeing an incredible renaissance, but we need to broaden that and keep it going.
Right. So there is a old adage, based in truth to some degree, perhaps a large degree, that when the United States gets a cold, Detroit and Michigan get the flu. So we don't know when it's going to happen, but there's likely an economic downturn at some point in our future. Just the business cycle, dictates that. How is Detroit and the region better positioned or not to withstand the next economic downturn whenever it might come?
I mean, I think we're much better positioned. I mean, it starts with the automotives. It always has. I hope in a way it always does. I see the leadership at General Motors and Ford. I see the things that they're doing in FCA. I see the investments that they're making. And they feel like they're totally different, positioned differently than they were in the past. And they're much more, sort of battle ready for a downturn. They're not sort of in a circumstance where they need to be at the highest volumes in order to be successful. I see an economy that's much more diversified. I mean, fintech, if you want to define what Quicken Loans and so on is fintech and some of the things that are going on, literally tens of thousands of jobs that are now within our community that simply didn't exist before. The startup ecosystem that I talked about and StockX and unicorns being grown within our community is totally different. I see a city that has much more stable leadership between our city council and mayor, county executive Evans and so on. I mean, so it feels like we're in much better shape. And it's not, to your earlier description, these silver bullet things that are underway. It's a much broader and more strongly, with a stronger foundation, the things that are taking place. Having said that, I mean, we have to continue the momentum because we don't want to lose it, and we don't want to be in a position that thing catches us unaware. But I think we're in a much better spot than we were before.
And the other thing I would add is, compared to 10 years ago, we have a much greater sense of regionalism. I mean, people who have businesses or live, out in the burbs have a much closer connection and affinity for the city than they did 10 years ago. They're rooting for the city now.
I mean, I think that's a great point. I mean, I think for a long time we were so balkanized, right? I mean, for 50 years it seemed as though the suburbs were rooting against the Detroit at some time, or some people were. Conversely, then there was a period of time when Detroit's really hot, and there's a sense that, the suburbs are challenged. I mean, I think people really get now that, we sink or swim together. And that positions us much better. And I think, informed leadership is starting to reflect that, and I think that positions us better as we go.
Like you, I spent a lot of time traveling, but, specifically, to the Grand Rapids area, just here locally. I saw the transition take place over the last 10 years. When I was there in 2010, 2011, they said, can we just write Detroit off? Detroit's unsavable. To the transition today, which is that we're all in for Detroit. We need Detroit to succeed. We're glad Detroit is succeeding. I mean, the regionalism or the regional support kind of even extends beyond this, tri-county or 11-county area.
I think so. I mean, what you see is, I was at MEDC for a lot of years, and we couldn't figure out why we couldn't get economic development going in the state. And the reason why is because we were exporting all our talent. And because people would graduate from the University of Michigan or someplace, and they'd get 2 pieces of paper, they'd get a degree and a ticket to Chicago. Mm-hmm. And what I think people realize now is that we need a really vibrant urban area at the center of our region and our state, and Detroit is that. And so I think now everybody is coming together. Things like regional transit, others are things that we need to continue exercising our new muscles of regionalism and get it across the goal line. But it is a much different feeling than it was before.
So moving on, you spent a decent time on your presentation talking about parking. One, getting rid of surface parking lots, talking about the artistic take on the Z deck. So with this next generation mobility that is coming at some point, hopefully relatively soon, driverless cars, increasingly connected cars, increasingly shared and autonomous. What does that mean for parking, and how do we handle it today where we're still driving our Ford Fusions and Chevy Equinoxes around, and how do we prepare for tomorrow when, well, maybe we're not?
That is a terrific question, and I wish that folks from the autos were here to tell me exactly when they were going to deliver this mobile cars, right? Because it's really a conundrum, because the parking is really challenged downtown because the density of downtown is higher than it's ever been. Parking becomes expensive, and so you're trying to figure out, okay, how do you park the people? What role does transit play? What role do these autonomous vehicles play? If you need more parking decks, because we all hate surface lots, if you need more parking decks, can you build them in a way that 10 years from now, you're not mad at yourself that you put all this money into a parking deck that you don't need anymore, so you can make it convertible? At Bedrock, we're spending time in a couple of different things. We're spending a lot of resources on mobility, autonomous vehicles to move people between places. We're spending time on actually building parking systems so you can get a lot more parking with automated parking systems. So you don't have to use up as much square footage.
These are these kind of mechanical devices
exactly.
that take
you pull
your
in.
car and...
Yep. So we're spending some time on that.
That also eliminates door dings, so I'm all for it.
What's that?
It eliminates door dings.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm all in favor of that.
But look, it's a challenge right now, because we're trying to figure out how to balance it to make sure we have parking for all this tremendous development that's taking place, and yet we're ready to quickly move into a world where you don't need all those parking spaces, which we're all looking forward to. So no silver bullet, but I think a lot of smart people are working on it, and clearly transit mobility is part of that.
Right. So I met you actually 15 years ago. I was in Washington working for the Bush administration. You were nice enough when you were at General Motors to show me what was then the Riverfront. And not much had happened 15 years ago. And you had this grand vision for what was going to happen. And I thought, well, that would be really cool if it could happen, but I kind of left saying, good luck with that. Most people who know you, and maybe in the audience, know you as the Bedrock guy. I'm not sure everyone knows that you have been the driving force behind the Detroit Riverfront Conservancy. You're the chair, you're one of the major donors, you and Karen and your family. Talk about the role of the Riverfront and what has happened and what is going to happen in Detroit.
Well, thank you. It is something that's really important to me. It started when we were at GM, and we said, we bought the Renaissance Center. You could not walk from the Renaissance Center to the river. I mean, think about that. You physically couldn't walk there because there's 3 levels of road and parking decks and all that kind of thing. And we looked across at Windsor, and maybe one of the few times, and I love Windsor, but people looked across there enviously, right? But we did. And we said, hey, why can't we have something like that? And so we embarked on the Riverfront Conservancy, and it was a nascent group that got bigger with Kresge and others that came to City of Detroit. General Motors, and we started with right behind the Renaissance Center. Then we said, let's do the East Riverfront, it's 3.5 miles. Then we said we could do the West Riverfront, ultimately 5.5 miles. But I think, Sandy, the thing that those of us that are involved with it are most proud of is the way it changed our community, because for many, many years before the Riverfront opened, there literally wasn't a place within the city of Detroit that people from the neighborhoods and downtown and the suburbs and white and black and young and old and baby carriages and everything else came together. And I think our community suffered immensely from that. And I think that led to a lot of the challenges our community had. And I think that was an example of 2 things that are profoundly important for our community. One is everybody came together because, we used to never cooperate on things like regional transit, things like that. But all of a sudden, the city had to be involved, the county had to be involved, the state,
Water,
DNR, the foundations, the corporate community, everybody came together. And I think it was the most significant example in our recent history of where people came together to take on a pretty daunting challenge. And the second is just the impact it had on the people. I mean, it's just the nature of that kind of interaction. And And I think we are profoundly impacted by it, and it's been something, that I've enjoyed working with. Obviously a great team and doing terrific things with it.
Well, Mark Wallace texted me just a little while ago. He said that that he and the team are watching this live stream, so we're sending our love to Mark Wallace right now. So
yeah, absolutely.
great job from
and
the
Faye Nelson before him.
Yeah, Faye
Will
was awesome.
Smith. I mean, just a great team, and lots of fathers to that success. But it's a great project.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, since you're on stage, I know that a lot of people are thinking about Dan and how he's doing. So first of all, Dan was perhaps unsurprisingly named by Crain's as the newsmaker of the decade, the decade of Dan. What does that mean to Dan and his family and his Quicken family of companies family?
Well, I know Dan, and he would say that it's been the decade of Detroit, not the decade of Dan, right? But he made a commitment when he came down here. I mean, one of his quotes was he spent the first 50 years of his life building Quicken Loans. He was going to spend the next 50 years of his life building up the city of Detroit. And that's how committed he's been to it and how committed he remains. And so while I'm always very careful to make sure that everybody understands that it takes a village and none of this could happen without a whole lot of people, I think it's equally true that Dan was a catalyst and a spark to this that took it at a pace and perhaps to a location that it would not have been achieved otherwise. And I think that's just a fair accounting of where we are. So I think Dan would be proud of I know Dan is proud of the accomplishments. I think he would, sort of push off the decade of Dan discussion. But he's obviously paying a lot of attention to everything's going on. He's probably watching our live stream as well, but he's getting out to the office a lot more. He's still making all the big decisions. He's still the, sort of the passion and the vision behind what's taking place for us in the city of Detroit. And I think, the next decade will reflect his continued involvement at the same level, and I think we're going to all be better for that.
Well, please tell Dan that we wish him well. We wish him continued great recovery, and tell him thank you for everything he's done for this city and this region. And Matt, thank you. Thank you for being here, and thanks for everything you and your family have done for Detroit and the region.
Thank you, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, Matt Cullen.
Thank you.
Returning to the stage, the chair of the 2020 Detroit Policy Conference, Dennis Archer, Jr.
Thank you, too. This was fantastic. It's not a shocker that they asked me to come out and invite everyone to the party. So immediately following this session, love to have you join us in the exhibition hall where we have an open bar from 3:30 to 4:30 and hors d'oeuvres. It's going to be a great time. And for those of you that are still up for it, then we're all going to Central Kitchen and Bar, and I'm going to put my hoodie back on. Thank you all very much. I hope you enjoyed the conference.